Let's get ready to rumble!
Big issue for Joshua Buatsi. Big issue. In the last 4 years, Azeez has fought 9 times and Buatsi has fought 5 times. Now, in an era where they fight 2 to 3 times yearly, 3 if you're lucky, 4 more fights in a 3 to 4 year period is a lot more fights. It's a lot more. Azeez is an improving fighter. Can you say the same for Joshua Buatsi? The Powell Stepien performance showed a regression. Tenacity was one of his traits. It was sadly lacking in this fight, but it's no surprise because before that fight in May, he had 1 fight between then and 2021, and that was the decision win over Craig Richards. He can punch, but Powell Stepien took him the limit. Craig Richards took him the limit. Ricards Bolotniks took him into the 11th. He stopped his 2 previous opponents before that. Santos with a nice highlight reel knockout. And he also stopped Marco Kalic. And if you saw that Kalic fight, somebody was getting pieced up. Somebody was getting pieced up in that fight. And Buatsi's natural gifts, that tenacity and that power, pulled out a good win for him. However, if he has a similar start like that against Azeez, although Kalic, obviously, different boxer, different body type from Dan, but if Buatsi has a horrible start like that, he'll be met with somebody with a lot more ambition and better fitness level. Dan will be looking to get inside Buatsi's jab and use his own jab to the torso, bring the uppercut into play, and make Buatsi work hard. Test that gas tank. Now, Dan's shortcomings are, against these big light heavyweights, he can't really box on the back foot like that. Well, I haven't seen it, and he hasn't needed to. So there is a chance that Buatsi can get his timing down and eventually nail him with a big right. Buatsi also has a good left hook. And if Azeez becomes predictable, charging in, and if he loses his shape, more importantly, if he's not cutting the ring off, or if he's not rolling into range correctly, yeah, he could get timed. At the same time, Buatsi shouldn't be looking to end this with 1 punch. He needs to be putting his shots together. He needs to be boxing. He needs to liven up his feet. The gas tank looked a little shaky against Bolotniks at times, and against Craig Richards, if I remember correctly. And his gas tank looks shaky. And he's been inactive. He's 30 now. Dan is 34. But Dan's gas tank has never really been in question. Can he push Joshua Buatsi back? The game plan will be to outwork Buatsi. How hard does Azeez hit? He's hit hard enough that no one's been able to walk through him. And he scored a few knockdowns, a few stoppages at British Commonwealth and European level. I don't think Buatsi can hang his chin out. But I'm not sure if he's going to be able to impose himself on Dan physically like that. Because he's so inactive. I'm just not sure. And the whole Virgil Hunter training him thing, we'll see. Azeez has got Buddy McGirt in his corner. They'll be very confident they can win this, or they wouldn't have took the fight. Buddy wouldn't have let him take the fight unless he had Joshua Buatsi studied. Now let's look at pressure. I was looking at the face-off on Sky between the two. Johnny Nelson was hosting. Azeez rightly said, "You're the Olympian. You're the one who they were saying was going to go on to win world titles. That's not me. The pressure is on you. Like if one of them was to lose, it will hit you worse because you've been projected to be the world champion. While Dan has had to come up a different route, managed or promoted, if you like, by Lee Eaton, who was with MTK. Dan was in no man's land a couple of years ago, even when he was British champion, because he didn't have a broadcaster behind him or a promoter. And they were saying, we're looking for somebody to ease the burden financially. And then they got the situation they have with Ben Shalom. I don't know if there's a contract or if it's fight by fight, but they have an arrangement. Dan's came through the back door from the small hall route, the traditional route. Southern area, English, British, Commonwealth, European. While Buatsi was complaining about the treatment that he was getting on Sky, this guy was on the undercards of at least 2 Anthony Joshua world title fights. Do you know what an advantage that is for a British fighter? 258 management with Joshua, with Eddie Hearn. But Buatsi didn't seem to be embracing that. He didn't say, yeah, I am the favourite, and that's why I'm going to win. He didn't say, yeah, I'm the favorite and I'm the favorite because of this. He seemed to want to pass it back off like, no, this is an even fight. But I'm thinking, like, if you don't believe you're the favorite as an Olympian, well, should I have faith in you then? Because he should be embracing the favorite role. He should be embracing it rather than passing it off. He doesn't have to be overconfident and disrespectful, but he should be embracing it. A big part of championship fighting is boxing with the expectancy of performance and the pressure that, yo, I am this precocious talent, but I'm going to show you I'm not worried about that. That's a big part of it. And those who shy away from it, you have to ask why. Rumor has it, when Buatsi was at Matchroom, they had fights for him to take, but he seemed to want longer to prepare. Rumor has it that he liked traveling and doing other things rather than being a gym rat. And you have to ask, how much does he really want it? This is a fight between two men who have turned down title shots against Dimitri Bivol recently. Buatsi had the opportunity first. Just before he split with Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, he was offered over 7 figures. And I believe there's another receipt out there where he turned it down before as well. Turned down the fight twice. And he's been a pro 6 years. No world title shot. Dan Azeez been a pro 6 years. No world title shot. Eddie Hearn offered him the fight in June this year, but he opted to take on Joshua Buatsi instead. Now, I don't know what Ben Shalom is telling these fighters who sign with him or are fighting with him on a fight-by-fight basis, whatever. Whatever he's telling them to make them turn down world title shots. I can think of 3 off the top of the head right now. Is he telling them that unless the fight is a draw, one of you is going to lose? The winner, I believe, will be in line for a shot at one of the sanctioning titles that either Beterbiev or Bivol has. But one of you is going to lose with the knowledge that you turned down a world title shot. And that's not a good place to be. The era of boxing that I started watching boxing, boxers didn't turn down world title fights. They didn't. I don't know who's looking out for these boxers, but Buatsi doesn't have to look too far from who he's affiliated with. Around the time he went from Matchroom to Boxer, Okoli went over there. He activated his rematch clause after losing his WBO cruiserweight title to Billiam Smith, and the murmurs keep coming out they don't want him to headline. There's talk that Masternak might be fighting Chris Billiam Smith. How old is Dan? Dan is 34 years of age, and I think he could pull off an upset. I think he could, but at the same time, I'm looking at that like controversial points win Dan Azeez. If Buatsi wins, he's the one more likely to get a stoppage. And if he was to stop Azeez conclusively, and I believe Azeez is a free agent unless his situation has changed at 34, Ben Shalom's going to go cold on him. And Sky are going to go cold on that guy to develop him again in the current market. Bear that in mind. If you lose to Bivol and you don't get beat up too bad, you can always go back to domestic level. But if you lose at domestic level at 34, then world title opportunities are further and further away. I'm going for the upset. I'm picking the upset. Dan Azeez, controversial points decision. That's what I'm picking. I believe him, Buddy McGirt, could produce a strategy to outwork, make minor adjustments if necessary, and take advantage of Buatsi's inactivity and lack of progression in the last 2 to 3 years or so. Listen, you got to take your opportunities in boxing. You can't be messing around. Yeah? Joe Joyce was the golden boy for a minute. Then them 2 losses to Zhang and Frank Warren after referenced twice. 2 separate interviews, he referenced it twice. That maybe Joe might want to retire. He didn't speak to Joe, and Joe said he might be considering retirement. No, Frank came up with that himself. I had idiots telling me I'm twisting Frank's words. If your employer tells you, let's say you work in the sorting office at the Royal Mail, it's one of my old jobs, and your boss comes up to you and says, I think you might be better suited for different employment. I'm not sacking you, but it's something you might want to think about. Does that sound like he's enthusiastic for you to stay on there? No, it doesn't. These promoters are ruthless, and they'll let you know,
blatant or indirectly,
that they don't want you there no more. They have no problem doing that. Tough sport. I saw this fight on the Leigh Josh Warrington undercard. It was a British featherweight title eliminator between HOPEY Price and Conor Coghill. Conor, 28 years of age. He was 14-0 with 1 win inside the distance going in. And now he's 14-1 and 1 loss. HOPEY Price was 11-0 with 5 inside the distance. He's now 12-0. He's 23 years of age. HOPEY, I believe, was the favourite going in. He had a horrible start to the fight, HOPEY. I was looking at HOPEY thinking, well, looks like you've got the range and the length. You're trying too hard to impress. But this is what happens. These kids, I'm probably 100% sure he's never fought in front of a 12,500 capacity filled arena. And I'm going to get into the whole story. I've said it several times, and I'm not just saying it because this is what I believe. I spoke to boxing trainers. I spoke to boxers. The size and the magnitude of the event changes how you're able to box. If you're a small hall fighter, then all of a sudden you're thrust onto the big stage. The zone broadcasting. You see Eddie Hearn sitting down ringside and all the celebrities. And this crowd is filled now because this is not the YouTube portion of the broadcast. This is the business end on the app. Some fighters crumble, some struggle to adjust, some thrive and actually up their game on the bigger stage. HOPEY got off to a horrible start and he got hurt a couple of times. And I was predicting it. I was writing it all down on Twitter. So this kid's not using his jab. He needs to be moving about. It's too early in the fight to be taking these chances and loading up. And Coghill was beating him to the punch. Then halfway through that fight, it changed. HOPEY got his range. Coghill got dropped in the 6th, once in the 11th, twice in the 12th, lost TKO in the 12th round. First L on his record. Must have been very disappointed. We move on a week and a couple of days later and we find out that Conor is in hospital with a bleed on his brain after the defeat. A bleed on his brain was discovered in the wake of his defeat by HOPEY Price in Sheffield. Referee Bob Williams stopped the bout. His trainer Steffi Bull said Coghill was in hospital under observation after a scan has discovered a bleed on his brain. Steffi added, Conor has had headaches since his boxing contest last week in Sheffield. Obviously, it's devastating news for Conor, as boxing has been his life since a young age. He's stable and resting and wanting people to respect his time during this difficult period. Everyone at Steffi Bull Promotions are praying for a full recovery and wish him good health. We will keep you all updated. It was the first defeat of Coghill's professional career. They made a little typo saying it was the first defeat of Price's professional career. I believe Terry Harper was on that card. She too is trained by Steffi Bull. They're all up there in that region up north. Conor comes from Hull. I basically used to moonlight between living up Hull and London. That's where Luke Campbell comes from. And the more I'm embracing the story, the more it's upsetting me. What's happened to this kid? I think he'll make a full recovery, but his boxing career is over. And I don't want to hear no whack jobs in the comment section. It's a brain bleed and that in a few months' time he'll be able to pass an MRI and get a boxing license. His career in the mainstream in British boxing is finished. I had someone in the comment section saying that David LEIGH, who suffered a brain clot and a mild stroke after losing a cruiserweight title challenge against Lawrence Okoli for the WBO belt. This guy was saying, I'm in the medical profession. You don't know what you're talking about. This guy will be able to apply for a license and box in a few months. I said, are you trolling? And he was deadly serious. You know, there was a specific name for the stroke. And he was explaining, oh, you see, with this stroke here, people normally bounce back and they get back to normal life and everything's okay. He'll be able to apply for a boxing license. Boxing is not like civilian life and regular civilian jobs. They don't just hand out boxing licenses like that. And he was arguing this really hard. I was telling him David LEIGH will never box again in the United Kingdom under the auspice of the British Boxing Board of Control. And he wasn't having it. There are some commissions in the world where he may get licensed to fight. In the UK, You've got the British Boxing Board of Control. They're not going to license him. You've got the British Irish Boxing Authority. They won't license him. You've got the PBA, the Professional Boxers Association. They're the ones who licensed the Misfits card on the weekend. They're not going to allow him to box. The only way he can box in Britain is on some unlicensed event where they don't do MRIs or anything remotely responsible. And then he doubled down on his argument. He'll be able to sue the British Boxing Board or this board if they don't allow him to have a license. I said, no, he won't be able to. Once the board put forward his medical records that are in the media, that he had a mild stroke and a blood clot, and they don't think it's safe for him to box, that will be it. He won't be able to argue that or sue shit. This is a combat sport. This isn't civilian life. But anyway, Coghill, Conor Coghill versus HOPEY Price was a really good fight. I watched it. It was a tale of two halves. The battle of southpaws. HOPEY Price. I wonder how he'll take the news. I mean, his career carries on. A lot of fighters who have injured their opponents and incapacitated them to the point they can't box no more, or even worse, they've died as a result of the fight. You know, a lot of these boxers who have hurt their opponents like that are never able to perform the same. And HOPEY Price has to decide what he wants to do. Is it business as usual? Because, look, if you're going to box on, it's got to be business as usual, or you need to walk away from the sport. As ruthless as that seems, or sounds, should I say. Any carryover, psychological carryover, could result in you getting hurt just like that yourself. You know, you got Eubank, senior and junior. Arguably, Chris lost his killer instinct after the Michael Watson fight. But in saying that, we were speaking about Eubank on Friday in my hangout, senior. Before the Michael Watson incident, he fought an opponent named Kid Milo, and he hit Milo with some hard shots, and Milo reeled back into the ropes, and instead of finishing him off, Chris just left him there, and the bell sounded. So he was always a little eccentric like that, but arguably he did lose his killer instinct after that. Junior, after the Nick Blackwell fight, he didn't seem to lose a step in terms of his tenacity to want to finish opponents. He didn't seem to lose a step, but everybody's different.